But if you close your eyes, does it almost feel like nothing?
Welcome to episode 4 of Popcorn and Prosecco, a show where we get to talk about lots and lots of movies. This week's half hour is dedicated to Mr. Peabody and Sherman, 300 Rise of an Empire, and the Grand Budapest Hotel. I'm Perri Nemiroff, and here are my co-hosts, Kristy, Puchko, and Angie.
Hey. Hello.
All right, so I'm kicking things off with a new release that's hitting this weekend, Mr. Peabody and Sherman. And if you watched the Rocky and Bullwinkle show, you're probably familiar with these characters. Mr. Peabody is basically the smartest dog in the world, and he decides to adopt a son, a human boy named Sherman. And they have a super cute relationship, but actually not so much in the original material. I think Mr. Peabody actually treated Sherman a little more like a dog, or at least in the episodes that I had seen from the original material. Here, it's much more so about like a genuine father-son relationship. And then on top of that, Mr. Peabody also has his Wayback, a time travel machine that lets him take Sherman in what is now this like little red orb that kind of flies around like a spaceship, and they zip around through wormholes or whatever it is back in time, and he gets to teach Sherman about history that way. So then the problem comes when Sherman gets in trouble at school. I have a hard time saying this seriously, but another little girl in his class calls him a dog, and he gets really pissed off, and they get into a fight, and then some woman at school threatens to take Sherman away from Mr. Peabody. So Mr. Peabody invites this little girl and her parents over to kind of smooth things over and make the problem go away. While he's busy entertaining the parents, the boy, Sherman, and this other girl, Penny, they decide to hop in the Wayback and go back in time, and they screw things up, and Mr. Peabody has to fix it. And it's just a whole bunch of outlandish hijinks. I mean, they're traveling back in time. They meet King Tut and Leonardo da Vinci, and they go to the Trojan War. A lot of it's funny. I mean, it's a very, very juvenile movie. It's as silly as you can imagine, and there's really not much of a lesson to be learned at the end because, I mean, a dog cannot adopt a boy and all of that.
Like I didn't realize that's the basis, is that like his custody is brought into question, and he's like, if I show them a good time.
I mean, that's pretty much the inciting incident of this whole story, and that's what everything is based around. They have to save the world and keep, I guess, the Wayback or whoever it is from destroying the space-time continuum, because if you go back to a time where you exist and then you come back, it ruins everything, and, you know, like, historical things start falling from the sky and people are in the wrong time periods. But really what this is about is a boy and his dog in like a really warped sense where it's a father and a son, and it's a journey in that respect. Their relationship grows throughout, and he's basically, it's kind of weird. I don't want to spoil anything, but at one point in the movie, I must say this because it's definitely part of why this is so silly. At one point in the movie, it's like kind of the slow clap version of everyone saying, "I'm a dog," you know, because like he got made fun of
Spartacus type of thing.
And everyone is like, everyone one by one steps forward and they're like, "I'm a dog, I'm a dog," and yeah, so, I mean, if that's the lesson.
In the pantheon of like recent releases, what would you compare it to on a level of kind of successful? Like not how it'll do, but like how enjoyable it is.
That's a tough question. I actually haven't seen a super juvenile animated movie in a while that also has something that appeals to adult, because some of the humor in this is like way beyond the younger audience's heads. They're not going to understand certain jokes, and a lot of the jokes, I mean, if you've seen the trailer, that thing where he's like doing Zumba, that whole little montage, there's shit like that that's like really, really silly where you're not going to find it funny, but some little 6-year-old is going to. My screening was packed with like teeny tiny children who were loving this movie from beginning to end, hysterically laughing and cheering. And the director, who's the guy who directed The Lion King, he came out and he introduced the screening to them, and it was like he was talking to a room full of adults. he just gave this really strange speech about how important this material was to him, and like I think he talked for like 10 minutes before this movie starts, and you could just like hear people like squirming in their seat and just eager for that movie to start. Nobody cared.
Kids don't give a shit if the director is like, "This is a really important piece of work, you guys," and like,
they don't understand source material yet.
And if they had brought out the kid, Max Charles, I mean, the kids probably would have gone nuts. But who cares about the director of an animated movie when you're 6 or 7 years old?
Totally. I do have a question. So you said that it's a kiddie movie. Is it the kind of kids movie that adults could also watch by themselves? Like Lego Movie is for kids, but like I feel like adults could watch that on their own.
No, I'm going to say no for this. It's sweet. It's endearing. And I love dogs. And actually, that's a good point to make because a lot of this is about like blurring the lines between humans and animals, and I treat my dogs like people, and I was able to relate probably much more than I should have in that respect. And there's really nothing to hate about this. It's a sweet movie with like a nice little simple arc. It's silly, it's funny. There's nothing that terrible about it. You're not going to hate it. But at the same time, I wouldn't recommend spending money on it if you have no kids to take, because that might be a little weird.
Okay.
I want that to be your pull quote. You're not gonna hate it, Perri Nemiroff.
So basically, adults won't hate it, kids will love it, but it's what?
Here we go.
Not great.
Adults won't hate it, kids will love it, and adults will be able to tolerate it. Actually, that's mean. That sounds meaner than I wanted it to sound.
Hey, that's more than you can say for a lot of, like, you know, quote-unquote all-ages family films, so that's not that bad.
I'm trying to think of, like, a really goofy kids animated movie that's come out and hasn't been, like, a total bomb in the past, you know, few months.
What about Rio? Oh, no, that's not in the past few months, though.
Well, it's coming back soon enough.
It is.
That's true. Well, let's move on, unless you have anything else, Perri.
No, I think moving into 300 Rise of an Empire from Peabody and Sherman is the perfect transition.
Yeah, because this is all for adults, not for kids. I have the book about the art, which is actually the artwork, and this is my favorite thing about the movie, which might sound like I didn't like the movie. It's actually okay. First off, 300 Rise of an Empire is not so much a sequel as it is a companion piece to the first film, because it takes place simultaneously with the first film. While the Spartans and King Leonidas and the 300 are off doing their thing, beating Xerxes on the fields, Themistocles, played by Sullivan Stapleton, is beating them at sea by taking on Xerxes' right-hand woman, Artemisia. Yeah, this is all real stuff.
Can you say these 5 times fast, please?
Never. I'm so scared of saying them now, and I'm sorry to Greek people because this is terrible, and Persians. I'm sorry to everyone. So anyway, the main conflict in this one is not about the Spartans, though you'll see a little bit of Gorgo and you'll see a little bit of Xerxes. This is really focusing on Artemisia leading her Persian forces, a huge naval fleet, against Stapleton and the Greeks. It's a satisfying sequel in that it's going to give you exactly what you liked from the first movie. There's some really graphic violence. There's like all that like Zack Snyder-y type of high contrast, burly muscles, slow-mo stuff. Though Zack Snyder didn't direct this. This is directed by NOAM, I think Churro is how he says his last name. And he actually directed Smart People, which is a comedy that no one should ever see because it's just, there's really nothing to it. It's
not that bad.
It's fine. I would never tell somebody like, you know what you need to see. It's whatever. But if you watch it, you'll be like, wait, and then 300 sequel? Like, that leap makes no sense.
Yeah, that's kind of quite the jump there.
Yeah. But, I mean, the movie itself is fine. It's like, it's going to be a satisfying spectacle. I'm going to have, you can read my full review on Cinema Blend, and we also have a 2-3D that talks specifically about the use of 3D in the film. Churro does this weird thing where there's just too many layers, and at one point I thought my glasses were dirty because I was just like, what is happening? And it was just that the movie has so much going on. But,
so he's an unexpected choice, but it sounds like he's at least successful in aping Zack Snyder. Does he bring anything of his own to the table, or?
That's where I had an issue with the movie, is that like he got the style right for the most part, but then with the acting, and people pointed this out, which may be true, the new characters have this restraint to them that feels so weird in this world. Where like Sullivan Stapleton, he could be from the Gilmore Girls. Like, his look and the way he talks. Yeah, Angie's face. That's exactly it. I was like, the whole time, because it's like King Leonidas was all like, this is Sparta.
Can you do that again?
Never.
I'm going to turn it into a GIF later. It's like a little bubble coming out of your mouth saying that.
But by contrast, Themistocles is kind of like, hey, Greek people, we should get together and go and whatever, and like we need to... It's like, it's not quite that low-key, but it's like way more low-key than I expected, which is kind of weird. And Artemisia, there's one part where she is wearing a shirt made of human hair, and like not...
Wait, which one is that?
She's the one by Eva Green.
Okay.
Yeah.
How's Eva Green in it? Because in the trailers, she looks hot.
She's cool, and she is hot. Her costumes are my favorite thing about the movie. Her costumes are really fascinating, and I'm not going to lie, most of what I enjoyed about this movie was things that reminded me of the upcoming season of Game of Thrones, because I kept being like, oh, Game of Thrones is almost here. Because you got Cersei, who plays Gorga, and she actually wields a sword in this one, so that's exciting, and Cersei doesn't get to do that on the show, at least not so far.
That's like a whole plot point in Game of Thrones is how much she wishes she could be
exactly
a sword-wielding warrior man.
That was exciting. She picks up a sword, and I was like, yeah, Cersei, get it, even though she's not Cersei, and I don't care. The costumes are really fantastic, like genuinely really fun to watch, and there's a lot of violence. So on that level, that was all really fun. It's just that it's not, like 300, when I saw 300, I remember just being like, oh my gosh, and like I'd never seen anything quite like it, and this doesn't reach that kind of like, you have to see it spectacle. But the one thing that really drove me crazy about this movie, which I didn't really get into in my written review, so I just want to bring it up here really quick, Artemisia's plot point is that same bullshit thing where, like, Zack Snyder might think he's being empowering, but it's sexist and annoying. Because he co-wrote the script, and in the script, and I didn't read the original comic, so maybe it's there too, and if so, it's still a problem because the movie should be its own thing. The movie should be able to answer to itself. Artemisia is the most powerful naval commander in the world. She is Xerxes' right hand, she is in charge, she is badass, everyone listens to her, and she spends a good chunk of the movie effectively looking for a boyfriend. I'm boiling that down a little bit, but that's essentially what happens, because she is basically like testing all these men, and she keeps being like, I want someone who can stand beside me, and I'm like, oh. Like, I thought maybe she means in war. I want to point out that Angie is a cat, and she hasn't grown some weird career hamster tail.
I was just wondering what that was.
Yeah, I was wondering if you guys can see it. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Hi,
at first I was
Roger.
like, yeah, that's Angie's cat. Anyway, but yeah, it's fine. But like that one plot line's just really tedious because it's like, can't she just be a warrior? Does she have to be a warrior who's like, yeah, but also I want a boyfriend? But she really wants a partner, and I get all that, but it was just like, I really would have preferred the two of them face off like you see cops and criminals face off, where they're like, I understand you, but I still need to take you down. And there's a little bit of that, but it's kind of undercut by her constant being like, so you want to get with this? Like, it's just, it's a little annoying. But like,
how
go
does
ahead.
it compare to Pompeii and Legend
way
of
better than
Hercules,
those.
the other sword and sandal movies you've seen?
It's way better than both. I enjoyed this. I did enjoy this movie. It's just that it's not as fun to watch as I remember 300 being. And admittedly, like, I was a lot younger. We were all a lot younger when 300 came out. Whatever.
Yeah, speed ramping was new back then.
Yeah, it was exciting. And like, as I took my husband, and as he pointed out quite rightly, they speed ramp everything in the 300 sequel, including like a man making hammering a sword to blacksmith it, and a guy like undoing riggings on the ship, and you're just like, this is not epic stuff that needs to be slow mode. Like, that's weird. Like when they're
We should just do this whole podcast that way next time.
That would be amazing.
Right.
An homage
Yeah.
to Zack Snyder on Popcorn and Prosecco. I love it.
There you go. But I mean, like, yeah, I think if you're going and you want to see more 300 stuff, then you're going to be satisfied. But just kind of, it's not better than the first one. So that's my thought on that. But yeah, if you're missing, if you want to see more 300, if you are really craving some Game of Thrones fix, it's pretty good.
All right. Well, on that note, I think we should move on to our last review of the episode, which is Wes Anderson's The Grand Budapest Hotel. And it takes place in this fictional Eastern European country, like right before World War II, right?
It's kind of ambiguous. I don't know if it's a real war.
It's not a real war. It's all kind of fictionalized, like
But
the
it's
Nazis are like
sort of
this
Nazi,
made-up
yeah.
thing that's, yeah. But anyway, so then it's the main character is Zira Mustafa, who is bellboy at the Grand Budapest Hotel, and he's mentored by Ralph Fiennes, who is not like Voldemort at all in this one. He's like super nice, and he's like this like he's just like this like super elegant concierge man who's like friends with everyone. And when one of the hotel guests, who is played by Tilda Swinton, pretending she's like 80 something, passes away, he is suspected of. She leaves him this priceless painting. He's suspected of murder, and Ralph Fiennes and his Ralph Fiennes and Zero Mustafa have to go on the run, and that's the movie. It's way more action-packed than I think a Wes Anderson movie usually is. Like, it has much more of like a, like a caper heist kind of feel to it. It actually feels pretty different, even though the style, as you would guess, is very Wes Anderson-y. I thought it was a lot of fun, and Kristy, I know you saw it too. What did you think?
Loved it. I really loved it. I gave it 5 stars in my review on Cinema Blend, and I just think it's really fantastic. Like, first off, Wes Anderson has this incredible ability to create a world in his film that feels real and feels like something you can really, like, indulge in and engage with. And I think this is his most ambitious movie. Like, he creates entire states, or nations, rather. He creates entire world wars, and it's this really intertwining narrative that involves 3 different times. And there's a really wide batch of characters, but then the central focus is still this intimate story between Zero and Gustav.
Gustav, that's his name.
Yeah, Gustav H. And it's just delightful. Like, I thought it was really funny. It was actually very suspenseful. There was like a part where I gasped aloud because I was quite surprised. It's funny because it did remind me of, there was an SNL sketch months ago where they were like, what if Wes Anderson did a horror movie?
Yeah, I seen
and
that.
It did remind me of that, and the coterie of strange intentions or something. I'm saying it wrong, but it was something really delightful like that, and it reminded me a little bit of that because we've seen violence in Wes Anderson movies before, but like the violence is amped up here, but it's still Wes Anderson style violence, so there's still like a kind of cuteness to it. That's not the right word, but I have a hard time kind of explaining his style.
Just like a Wes Anderson-ness to it. It's Wes Anderson-y.
It is, but it's like, they said that a source of inspiration were like 1930s kind of screwball comedies, and you definitely get that sense. Like, everything is kind of quaint and darling, but then the violence is like a really stark contrast to that, but still in keeping with the theme. Is it dark?
Is that darkly presented here?
It is dark. Like, it is.
The violence is dark. Like, you see some more graphic stuff than you would expect in
people are murdered.
Yeah,
and like there was some violence in Moonrise Kingdom, like. But it was kind of like played off as a joke.
Well, there's
you see severed body parts and stuff in this one, and obviously it's not played up. It's not Saw or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it's definitely much more. And because you're not really, or at least I wasn't really expecting it, because again, it's a Wes Anderson film. Like, I was just like, whoa, what was that? Yeah. I mean, it's not to the point where it's like, it's not an actual horror film. It's not like super grim and gritty and dark or anything like that. But it is. It does kind of, expand his style in a new direction that I don't think we have seen too much of before.
You know what it reminds me of is The Thin Man. Not in the violence, because I don't remember the Thin Man movies being very violent, but it has that kind of whimsy to it where they're talking about very violent things, but everyone's like, so, and there's like this elegance. And I love Gustav H. I think he's one of his best characters yet.
Absolutely.
And Ralph Fiennes nails it, because like Gustav is incredibly classy, and he spouts poetry, but then he also just spouts curse words. Like, he curses so much. Like, I interviewed Ralph Fiennes for this, and it was really fun because while we were talking, he broke into character and just started cursing at me, and it was amazing. Like, he was like talking about that duality in him, and he just started going, "What the fuck is going on?" I was like, "Oh my god, you just became Gustav H. This is so cool." So like,
yeah, he's really interesting. I mean, he's like really like vain and shallow and superficial in some ways, but he's also just like he's deeply loyal and compassionate, and
he's very insightful. Mm-hmm. And he's very forgiving to people. Like, there's a clip that they released online where he's in prison and he has a big black eye, and he's like, someone's like, what happened? And he explains he got into a fight with he calls him something terrible and then says Pinky, and he's like, but now he's a dear friend. And you're like, of course he is. Of course.
That pretty much sums up the character, yeah.
Yeah, like, it's a really nice distinction. So yeah, it's a really wonderful movie. I think if you're a fan of Wes Anderson, you're really going to like it. And I think even if you aren't a fan of Wes Anderson and think maybe his stuff is so cute that you just can't get into it, you might still be interested in this because it's a lot less it's a lot less sentimental than his other stuff. It's nostalgic, but not in like a, hey guys, remember this great song by the Beatles way, but in a like there's like a sense of regret and that kind of nostalgia where you're seeing people looking back on their lives.
There's a sense of, just like the entire, I think he's talked about this in interviews too, where it was like he captures Europe at a point where just everything is changing around them, and it gives this film like a really bittersweet feel that is, I mean, I think people have argued that some of his films are too cutesy and sentimental and nostalgic, like you said, but there's a bittersweetness to this one that to me felt richer and more profound and ultimately more touching.
Any awards potential? Or is it going to kind of be forgotten at that point?
I've actually already written about how I think it could be a Best Picture contender, and I know it's really early to say that. I know the Oscars were Sunday, and I'm sorry. But I wrote about this earlier this week, about 10 movies that could potentially be up for the Oscars next year, and I genuinely think this could be because, one, the Oscars recognized her this year, which is huge. And, of course, this movie has a huge obstacle to overcome in the fact that, like, when stuff comes out in the spring, it's like the Oscars don't even know they happened. But, like, I think this could be like Moonrise, where people are going to continue to talk about it and continue to, like, open up to it. And I think it's really sensational. It's just such an ambitious movie. It's such an interesting movie, and he brought together a cast that is just fantastic.
How's some of the supporting characters? Because that cast is like a mile long, and I think you guys named just like 4 people.
Some of them, a lot of the cast members are only in it for really a few minutes at a time. Like Tilda Swinton's role, she's one of the people that you'll see on like that giant poster with like 20 characters on it, I think. But she's not in it that long. Yeah. But everyone who's in it, for the brief time that they're in it, are pretty perfect. A lot of them are people who have worked with them before. Some of them aren't. Saoirse Ronan is in it. She has one of the bigger supporting roles, and I thought that she was just utterly charming and lovable.
It's very different from her too. Like it's like because normally we're used to her seeing her play teen assassins and tough girls. And while Agatha, or is it Agatha or Agnes?
It's Agatha, I think.
Agatha. Well, Agatha is courageous. She's not like a badass, and it's actually really fun to watch her play someone who is a sweet baker who is very affronted by the idea of doing something unwayward. But yeah, there's a lot of if you're a really big Wes Anderson fan, there's a lot of deep cut stuff where you'll see people that have been in his other movies and they'll just be there for like a second, but you're like, oh, that guy, hooray, and then we get to keep moving. It's not distracting. It's just kind of like, you really get the sense of like, it feels like a big expansion on his style of filmmaking and on the way he creates his worlds. It feels like a real progression. Like there was stuff that I was like, oh, that reminds me of Rushmore because of this, awkward sort of father-y son bond that they have going on. And oh, that reminds me of Fantastic Mr. Fox because you've got this heist going on that is incredibly ill-planned. And like there's all these elements from his movies that seem to feed into this, but in a really natural way. That it just feels like the next step for him, but like a really fantastic step.
Well, speaking of the cast, Kristy, what did you think of the lead character? Because he's not someone who is famous at all, unlike most of the other people that were in the movie with him.
So that's actually, that's not unusual for him either, because with Rushmore, Jason Schwartzman had never made a movie before, and with Moonrise Kingdom, who are those kids? But yeah, he cast Tony Revolori, who I spoke with last week too, and he was really sweet, and he's 17, which I was shocked by, because in the movie he looks older. He's 17 in real life, and he's just teeny and very sweet. But yeah, I thought Tony Revolori was great, and it's like he plays young Zero, and then F. Murray Abraham plays older Zero, and they the two things fit really well together, and it's a tricky style, I think. Like I've seen a lot of people attempt that style, that like Wes Anderson acting style where there's such a certain preciseness to it that you kind of have to.
It's very mannered, very precise. Like you said.
Not like wooden exactly, but it's definitely toned down. There's no like big emotions except for Gustav, and like Gustav and Steve Zissou are kind of similar. But yeah, I thought Tony was great. He really nailed the style, and like his interactions with Rafe really are wonderful, and made me feel for the characters, and his romance with Saoirse is adorable. And, like, their interactions, there's, like, a scene of them online where he's trying to convince her to take this note that will tell her where the stolen painting is, and she doesn't want anything to do with it. He's like, take it anyway. They're just very sweet. It's, like, it works so well. Because, like, so much of the movie depends on this kid who, like, you can look, he's done a couple of things, but, like, nothing most people have seen or would remember. And then, like, yeah, Wes Anderson casted him and made him the center of this whole spiraling world, and he really does a wonderful job. It's not showy. It's not like Rushmore in that Max Fisher's a very big character. Zero's not a big character, but it's really lovely. I think everybody in this did such a fantastic job. I mean, I don't give out a lot of 5-star reviews, but I love this movie. I want to see it again. I'm going again this weekend. Is what's happening.
I love the movie. I want to see your Jeff Goldblum clip.
Yeah, so we're going to wrap up today with a story. Unless, Angie, do you have any other comments you want to make on Grand Budapest?
Go ahead.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up with a story I teased last week when I was wearing fancy hair, and what I've learned is called a neck affair in the dialogue of Jeff Goldblum. So I interviewed Jeff Goldblum last week, too. There was a junket. I got to talk to a lot of people. Him and Willem Dafoe were paired together, and I was really excited to talk to them both, but especially Jeff Goldblum because I've had a crush on him since 1993 when Jurassic Park came out. And I was trying really hard to be professional. I was like, I walked in, I was cool, I was composed, I was ready to do this. And then Jeff Goldblum locked eyes with me and said, "Wow, you look fantastic." And it's a little bit of a blur from there. I walked over, I introduced myself, I said hello to him and Willem, and I said I was a big fan of both their work, I was really excited to talk to them. I told Jeff Goldblum that I grew up nearish where he grew up because we were both from Western PA, represent. And he was like, "Oh, yeah, great." I sit down, and he says again, "You just look fantastic." And, like, I could not have been more excited. I was elated in this moment in time. And then he kept talking. Like, at this point, we're waiting for the camera crew to kind of get everything ready so I can start answering questions or asking questions. And he said, "And what is this neck affair you have on?" And it was this, like, big statement necklace you could see on last week's episode. And I said, "It's a statement necklace." And he said, "It certainly is. What is it saying?" And I think in, like, one of the greatest things I've ever done in my life, instead of answering the question, turned it around and said, "Well, what do you think?" Because honestly, just because I didn't know how I was saying words. Like, he was saying so many nice things to me, and I have such a crush on him that I was flabbergasted that my mouth would even go. And then he just said this incredible thing about, like, comparing me to the constellations and stars in the night sky. Like, I'm not joking. That is what he said. I don't remember it because, like, effectively, I think to deal, my brain just was like, we're just going to shut down for a second. And, like, I couldn't take it in. I couldn't handle it. But thankfully, the next thing I said was, "Please make sure that's on my card," which when you do these interviews, they give you, like, a flash card with all the footage. And it was on my card. So when I got home, I got to watch it back again and again and again and a lot of times. And tomorrow, or on Friday, on Cinema Blend, it will be online. The clip starts. They actually started recording from the point where he calls me fantastic looking for the second time. And then you can see me reacting and him just flirting like Jeff Goldblum. And, like, yeah, the interview itself actually went incredibly well. I am really proud of myself, and I want to put on record that I should have cut to show this, but I wasn't thinking about it at the time. I pulled myself together really quickly, and there is no edit in between me having my little moment of just, oh my God, to my moment of, like, so in the movie. But yeah, it was. He completely has he's totally aware of the effect he has on I think fans and women, and, like, I can't imagine he knew going in that I was a huge fan, but, like, he locked eyes and just, I don't even know. Like, I have not stopped talking about this. I'm really excited. And if you have a crush on Jeff Goldblum, which I think just most women our age and most people, I think, do
Well,
in some
yeah,
way.
I think that's probably how he already knew that you had a crush on him, because
Yeah,
he's just like,
assumes.
who the fuck doesn't have a crush on me? I'm Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, like, this week, someone released a song that is just like a remix of his laugh from Jurassic Park. Like, he's had a profound effect on our lives. And, yeah, I got to meet him, which was super exciting, and he flirted with me a little bit, which is just amazing and really cool. And you get to see it on Cinema Blend, so definitely check it out, because me telling the story is fun, and I will continue to for decades. So thank you, Jeff. But yeah, you can see it in person, and it's
I can already see it, like, 50 years in the future, your grandchildren are going to be like, "Yes, Grandma, you told us how you met Grandpa."
My husband won't appreciate that joke. But I do want to say, because I feel like, yeah, it sounds like I'm fangirling, but I mean, we all have crushes, it happens. But yeah, I did call my husband right after, and I was like, "You won't believe Jeff Goldblum was totally flirting with me," and his response was awesome. And then I showed him the tape, and he was basically like, "You're adorable." And I was like,
I mean, is someone really going to be mad if their spouse leaves them for Jeff Goldblum? I feel like
right? That might be in my vows somewhere. I mean, I had to have planned.
I'm pretty sure that's in the paperwork.
Jeff Goldblum is way up there, but it's like Jeff Goldblum, Ian Malcolm. Like, if that was there,
Yeah.
I'd probably turn into a puddle of mush and never come back to form ever again. But Jeff Goldblum is cool too. I got Ian Malcolm in the BuzzFeed quiz, and I'm like, yeah, success for the day. You know,
Someone
which Jurassic Park character are you?
No, that's a total win. That was someone asked me when I said to them, I said I was teasing a friend of mine, being like, "So I met Jeff Goldblum, and he was totally flirty." And they were like, "Did he drop a pellet of water in your hand?" I was like, "I would have exploded. I would have spontaneously combusted. That would have been too much." Like, this was already something that like my body had to like physically be like, "What?" But yeah, so.
That's
yeah,
like the
sorry,
equivalent
guys.
of having Samuel L. Jackson come up to me and say, "Hold on to your butts." The
Exactly.
day that happens, my life will be complete.
The day that happens, we will devote an entire podcast episode to you telling that story.
Yeah.
I will have that whole story for you, too.
So thanks for letting me share that story, guys. It's I genuinely do think that if you like Jeff Goldblum, you'll get a kick out of that story and the video. And he was just really cool. Like he is exactly what you expect, and then a little more. Like you know what I mean? Where you're like, oh, I think I know what Jeff Goldblum is, and he is, but more so.
Nice.
It's always nice to hear that about someone you admire. So you guys can catch that clip for yourself in the description section of this post, but that is all the time we've got for you this week. But if you enjoyed the show, keep following along at popcornprosecco.com, on Twitter at popcornprosecco, and also be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Popcorn Prosecco. Comment, tell us what you think. We'd love to hear everything you think about the show, and maybe even what you want us to talk about on future episodes. Now, Angie, where can viewers catch you on the web?
They can find me on Twitter at AJHan, that's AJHAN, and I write for slashfilm.com.
How about you, Kristy?
You can find me on Twitter at Kristy Puchko, KristyPuchko, and I write for Cinema Blend and Pop Crush, but if you go to my blog, decadentcriminals.com, you can see all the highlights and stuff like that there. And I won't be with you guys next week. I'll be away, but Angie and Perri will step you through all the exciting things that are coming out next week.
All right, now I'm going to go for my Twitter handle first. If you want to hear some of my South by Southwest reports, follow along there. I'll be tweeting like crazy. P. Nemiroff, and then you can catch my work all over the place, Shocky.com, Movies.com, ScreenRant.com, Collider.com, ComingSoon.net. We've got this covered. I think I got it all. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
But if you close your eyes, does it almost